Hello and welcome, my friends and viewers, to this week's episode of Legendlore, where I draw and talk about monsters, characters, gods, and other things from D&D 5th edition, all while giving a small but quickly digestible history about them. Together we'll go over their history within the game, how they're utilized in the modern edition, and how you guys can utilize them in your own games. This week, we're finally getting to cover dwarves with their patron deity, Moradin the Allhammer, featured in both the Forgotten Realms, Dawnwar, and Exandrian pantheons of gods. Getting right into it, Moradin's portfolio covers creation, creativity, and protection, serving as the patron god of the dwarven ancestry. His titles include the Allhammer, the Soul Forger, and the Dwarf Father. His alignment is lawful good. His holy symbol is either a hammer and anvil or a two-headed hammer, with the ends being the profiles of two dwarven faces. His domains are of the forge and knowledge. His worshippers include, obviously, dwarves, but also blacksmiths, armorers, warriors, and creatives of all kinds, from poets to masons to carpenters and so on. His favorite animals are the Arumvarax and the giant fire beetle. His favored monsters are celestials, such as archons and planetars, elementals such as Azer and Galabdurs, gold, silver, and sapphire dragons, guardian nagas, holophants, maruts, and shidus. His favorite colors are electrum, silver, and brown, and finally, his favor is often shown through the presence of mastercraft works or a white radiance around items or people of note. In terms of his appearance, Moradin is often depicted as a 20-foot tall muscular dwarf in full plate, with a flowing mane, beard, and glowing eyes. But with that said, he also has alternate appearances, such as being dressed plainly in a smith's apron and leather leggings with bracers of gold, or a more niche appearance of a faceless humanoid with a mane formed of fire, holding a burning heart in his hands. Thank you, Critical Role. Personality-wise, Moradin is a discerning and moderately distant deity, not in that he rarely interacts with his followers, but that in he expects his faithful to study, learn, and grow into high levels of expertise within their own fields. While a good and brave heart is needed to be a member of his faithful, his approval is only gained through the creation of quality masterworks. He's very much like a stern father in that way, often very uncompromising but unflinchingly protective of the dwarves, their values, and of all creative endeavors, and as such takes a no-nonsense approach towards plagiarism. But despite this very stoic and unrelenting portrayal, Moradin himself was actually extremely cunning and crafty, keeping himself out of the public eye and out of any divine politics in favor of waiting for an opportune moment to strike. This falls in line with the belief of many people that dwarves are often one-track minded and easily predictable, which can prove to be a very dangerous assumption to make. In terms of his relationships with other gods, Moradin kept cordial and strategic alliances with gods such as Gond, Kozuth, Helm, Torm, Tyr, and the patron gods of the other races, save for Grumpsh for obvious reasons. Moradin has actively opposed him along with other gods, evil giants, and the banished dwarves known as the Duergar. This included gods such as the aforementioned Grumpsh, Maglubiet, Laudiger, Surtur, and Torog, the Crawling King, who in my opinion is actually Moradin's greatest foe. In terms of his relationship with his actual followers, Moradin rarely corresponded with his faithful via avatars, preferring to work through more subtle and minute manifestations, so as to teach his followers to have sharp perceptions for his presence, and preventing them from relying too much on his own divine power rather than their own potential. The only time he ever actively appears is when the dwarves are faced with overwhelming odds, and this usually came in the form of empowering his warriors, or calling for non-dwarven peoples to come to the aid of his own. In terms of Moradinian clergy and worship, most clerics were usually formed of distinguished dwarven family lines and wore earthly colors, chainmail, and silver helmets. They were also known to pray for the spells at dawn and held Moradin's holy day on nights of the crescent moon, worshipping at both forges and hearths. Moradinian clergy was often both at the forefront of guidance, morality, and protection of dwarven communities, and so you would see many dwarven societies adopt a union of church and state regarding their laws. Moradin would also be invoked in all activities, from mining to forging to crafting, even if the actual activity itself had nothing to do with jewels or metal or weapons. In terms of distinct clerical orders, my research only revealed one known as the Hammers of Moradin, who existed as the sort of elite military arm of the church. They often served as commanders of armies, as well as an elite strike force dedicated to dealing with threats from orcs or Duergar or aberrations. I kind of like to think of them as an equivalent to the Space Marines from Warhammer 40k, these sort of larger-than-life warriors that the common folk sort of revere. Now, when it comes to running Moradin at the table, I haven't actually really had a chance to depict him in a lot of my games since I've had very few PCs end up as dwarves, or even follow him if they weren't a dwarf. With that said, I do have some idea planned for if he ever comes up as a point of interest, and my depiction of Moradin would be mostly based off of gods such as Hephaestus from Greek mythology, Lu and Bridget from Celtic mythology, and Brock from Nordic mythology. For me, I view dwarves as usually very suspicious of arcane magic due to both its strength and how it can absolutely level common folk if wielded by people with malicious agendas. And thus I have Moradin believe that arcane magic should only be present in the form of controllable and removable items, because a tool is easier to control and prevent disaster than a person. As such, dwarves in my eyes value the creation of magical items over the presence of arcane magic users, such as sorcerers, bards, and wizards, while still revering the presence of divine and primal magic a la clerics, paladins, or druids. This is because dwarves believe that Moradin will know if a member of the faith has gone astray, and can thus strip them of any divine power before they can cause any real damage with its use. Moradinians often also fall into the issue of overharvesting resources in order to feed their constant need to build and create, such as overlogging forests, mining too deep into the mountains and unleashing eldritch horrors, or causing natural disasters such as landslides due to their constant harvesting of ore and creation of mines. With this in mind, this can often lead them into conflict with druids, elementals, and sometimes aberrations depending on how deep into the realm they go. And while I realize this has kind of become more of a diatribe on dwarves than Moradin himself, I do believe that Moradin stokes these beliefs in his people in the pursuit of both protecting them and ensuring that they can battle against any foe, be it an ambitious sorcerer, an orc barbarian, or a terrifying beholder that they accidentally dig up while searching for gemstones. With all this in mind, here are a couple of classes and subclasses that I personally feel align with Moradin very well to use as inspiration for both PCs and NPCs if you're a Dungeon Master. For Artificers, given their penchant for building their whole kits around weapons, armor, and magic items, I think all subclasses, save for the Alchemist, can fit within Moradin's domain, especially that of the Armorer. For Barbarians, the Path of the Giant is a great way to exemplify the dwarf's wish to wield the power of the giants, and Battle Ragers, Juggernauts, and Berserkers all can work as the baseline angry dwarven PC, and Zealots also make for great devout faithful to the Allhammer. For bards, poetry, song, and performance is still a method of creativity and thus technically falls under Moradin's purview. With that said, while the College of Creation is the obvious pick, I also recommend the Colleges of Valor, Dance, and Lore to draw upon Moradin's martial and knowledge aspects respectively. For clerics, Moradin's base domains of the Forge and Knowledge both work, but I also like to include the domains of War, Peace, and Arcana under his purview. A War and Peace cleric can be a fulfilling clerical duo of PCs or NPCs, and the Arcana cleric can work into Moradin's focus on the creation of magical items. For druids, due to Moradin's penchant for overharvesting the world's natural resources, I felt that the Circle of Land druid, specifically one of the mountain environment, would be the only ideal candidate for one who can worship him. For fighters, the subclasses of the Battlemaster, the Champion, and the Rune Knight all work very well for a Moradinian, the first two relying more on pure skill and magic items and armor, while the last bears the power of the giants via rune crafting for their armaments. For monks, Cobalt Soul monks draw on Moradin's knowledge aspect, Kensai monks draw upon the use of a weapon and creative calligraphic arts, and the Four Elements can draw upon the Allhammer's elemental alliances. Now for paladins, almost all paladin subclasses, save for the Oathbreaker, can work for a Moradinian. The Oath of the Ancients abilities can be easily reflavored to be stone-based rather than nature-based. The Watchers can serve as a protector against aberrations, and Devotion, Glory, Conquest, and Vengeance are all largely self-explanatory. For Rangers, crossbow-wielding, trap-laying Groomstalkers, Hunters, and Monster Slayers can all make for great Moradinian Prowlers, and the Horizon Walker can be great for a specialist who deals with aberrations that arise from the Underdark. For rogues, due to the largely honorable nature of dwarves, I found it a bit difficult to find subclasses that still fit with Moradinian ideals. That said, the Scout and the Swashbuckler are really the only two I can personally recommend, mostly because the latter reminds me of the character Beast from Divinity Original Sin 2, who by the way is a great blueprint for a dwarven character. For sorcerers, Divine Sorcery and Clockwork Sorcery both work for Moradin's godly and orderly aspect as a lawful good deity. Warlocks, due to Moradin's distant approach regarding his faithful, would only really benefit from the Hexblade Warlock patron, for obvious reasons, and I personally suggest that the blade take the form of an axe, hammer, or other bludgeoning weapon that a dwarf would favor. And finally, for wizards, due to Moradin's large distrust in arcane magic, I would recommend the subclasses of the Abjuration, Transmutation, and Scribe schools, as these three are focused on respectively protecting against magic, changing materials into other materials, which is very useful for dwarven construction and forging, and the use of a spellbook as a companion, which can sort of function as a check and balance against the wizard's power. With all that out of the way, here are a couple of magic items that I feel align with Moradin very well and can be wielded by his faithful or serve as loot gained from defeating his enemies. And finally, for our homebrew magic item this evening, we have the Forgeplate, which is a +3 set of plate armor that requires attunement, the helmet of which appearing to be in the shape of an anvil with a slit cut into it for vision. This armor grants a +3 bonus to the wearer's armor class, as well as any strength checks or saving throws that they may make while wearing and being attuned to it. The wearer can also cast the spells Heat Metal and Mending at will, and once per encounter they can spend a bonus action to hammer their weapon against the head of their anvil helm, empowering it with a +1 bonus that stacks on top of all other bonuses and allows it to deal an additional 1d6 fire damage on a successful hit. With this in mind, this does have the potential to turn a +3 weapon into a +4, so make sure to use it wisely. But with that, that's our coverage of Moradin the Allhammer, everyone. I want to thank all of you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe, and press the little bell icon to be notified when future videos come out. And if you guys want a chance to vote on future content, please check out the community tab for when the polls show up. Players, please let me know if you guys have ever played Moradidians or your guys' encounter with them. And DMs, let me know how you guys have run Moradin in your games, and if there's anything that you would do or change to the ideas and advice that I've given here. And also, let me know what you guys would like to see in upcoming videos. But until then, I'll see you guys next time.